Talent Talk Tuesdays is all about harnessing your God-given talents to live with greater clarity, purpose, and joy. You are wonderfully made, my friends. May all we do be for God's glory. Hello and welcome to Talent Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Lisa Mladnick, and I'm really kind of winging it this week because I was exposed to a lot of people sick over the holidays and then fell on some water, like just slipped and crashed down in some water at a grocery store about a week ago and really hurt my ankle, was on crutches for a bit, and then got the flu that had been going around the household. So yeah, I'm just kind of coming back from a little bit of getting sidelined, but it's okay. It was, as usual, God finding a way to permit something. He wasn't inflicting it on me, but he did permit some things to slow me down. And I have continued doing my liturgy of the hours daily, not all of it every day, depending how sick I was, but because I'm in third order Carmelite formation, that's a beautiful part of my life. A really incredibly rich encounter with the Lord and his word every day. And so I just wanted to share something with you, and I've looked high and low for it. I emailed it to myself. I know I saved it. I wanted to read you a quote from the Liturgy of the Hours in this episode, and I can't find it. So maybe that's just thematically perfect for today. I called this episode Getting Smaller because the idea that came from that reading was such a small idea, like a subtle realization that wasn't really spelled out, but it came through in the writing about Christ becoming human and still being fully divine, of course, but this littleness of his humanity, this smallness, struck me so powerfully that it had a ripple effect in all my human interactions from that moment on. And so actually, I believe I read that actually before this time of quiet, but during this time of quiet, that was actually at least 2 weeks ago. So before all that happened, but it's had a lot of ramifications, and I want to share the insight with you because I think it's really important. So just bear with me a moment because I'm not super organized today. But when we think of Christ, right, he is fully human and fully divine, and his divinity is incomprehensibly large, right? It's infinite, it's timeless, it's complete, pure, utterly holy, creative, powerful, merciful, present, gentle, and probably hilariously funny, like everything good, everything beautiful, everything true. He's the source. Everything was created through Christ. John chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, I believe it is, say that. But he goes from God to also being man. He comes and embodies human flesh and sanctifies it, claims it, reclaims it. But he goes from God to, zygote, and then to infant, and then to man, really poor itinerant preacher. We know this, right? And then to victim, and then to resurrected and glorified Lord, and then to host in our hands and in our stomachs and into the tabernacle of our souls. And he's in that hidden place in churches all over the world and in souls all over the world, hidden, small. And that has just struck me so powerfully for the first time. It's weirdly enough, maybe because at 64, like lots of you have been through some things, it's easier for me to understand the tree of life and the carrying of crosses, of uniting sufferings to the cross as being a place of beautiful and very sweet intimacy with the Lord. Not that it's easy, but that it's real, that I know it. It's easy to think of him even as victor and king, creator, all of those things, savior, Lord. But his smallness is another thing he wants us to imitate. And so that's really struck me in moments of grace when I've been on the verge of getting big at somebody. So something happens that hurts my feelings, I start to brood, and I start to boil, and I start to rehearse, and I'm getting ready to blast somebody. And the thought of the smallness of Christ stops me in my tracks. And in a tiny, subtle shift, something happens in my soul. And I let that smallness speak to me. And that's it. All the air goes out of my anger and resentment, and something in my spirit bends almost as if I'm just bending a little bit to go through a doorway into a much bigger, more beautiful, peaceful, simple, freer place. Like chains are falling off me, but it's so subtle. I'm suddenly out of that place of turmoil and in a place of stillness. Immediately. And I recognize this as a grace, and maybe it's because it's still the Christmas season, and this is a really extraordinary, special, seasonal kind of a God giving gifts moment. I pray to God I never lose it, or at least the memory of it, so that it will continue to guide my life. But it is a mystery. It's a mystery. St. John the Baptist in the Gospel of St. John, chapter 3, verse 30, said, "He must increase and I must decrease." Now, we can look at it literally. Obviously, he had been preparing the way of the Lord. The Lord had begun his ministry. It was time for John to step aside. But John never stopped his mission. He kept preaching repentance. In fact, he took it right to the king and got himself beheaded. So it's not that he stopped using his talents or his calling, right? He kept going. But the Lord increased. And I'm going to just assume, because God is so good and because St. John the Baptist, one of my favorites, the last and the greatest of the prophets, would have been making room even in his own soul for the presence of Christ now present in the world, beginning his ministry. And so what does this really have to do with talent? This show's all about talent, right? But it's in the context of the most important things, of God's love, of what he's saying to us, of how he is with us, of how he is inviting us, and changing us in ways that are not like the way we want to change each other. Like, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to get all big on you, and I'm going to fix you. I have those urges, lots of them. It's not like that. It's something else. This is another one of those paradoxes in the life of faith, that we die in order to live, right? We die, we get submerged in the waters of baptism, and we die to sin. We get claimed for Christ. But I want to just say, I tend to cause a lot of my own suffering. And that's been, I think, the wisdom of increasing age, for me to just know that. Oh gosh, was I a victim when I was younger? When I came back into the church in my 30s, and I've told you all this before, not expecting you all to have heard every episode, but when I first started confessing my sins again as an adult, after not probably having done that, gosh, I'm going to guess maybe since my confirmation, it felt good to confess my sins. It felt good to lay that down and own it and give it back to God and ask for help and receive blessing. I didn't feel so helpless anymore. And this is really, really neat too, but it's neat in a different way. There I was taking it on. I was confronting self, and that's still good. That's something I want to keep doing regularly for the rest of my life. This is different. This is becoming smaller. And Jesus is leading the way to being smaller. One of my favorite saints, a great Carmelite, Saint Therese of Lisieux, talked a lot about being little, right? Let God be big. We're little. He takes care of it. She said she couldn't become a great saint on her own. She didn't want to just be holy. She wanted to be a great saint. She's now a doctor of the church. She died at 24. The little flower. She wanted to be the little daisy in God's garden, not an important, big, beautiful rose or lily. And yet she showers us with roses. So think in terms of the excellence that we're called to, being the best that we can be for him, for his glory, just out of love for him, out of love for that tiny babe, that poor child in the manger. What could littleness do for us? So I want you to think of this idea of littleness, or of getting small, or getting smaller, maybe just a little bit, as being a place of reaching for Jesus, just reaching for him in his smallness. Reach out from your heart And as you learn more about yourself and about each other and talents and each other's wiring, and you start to see through each other's eyes and all of that, that's going to really support this work. That's going to give you a greater sense of confidence and skillfulness at navigating the people God has given you to love, the situations, the work, the calling, your ministries, your sufferings. But keep a lookout for those moments of smallness, of opportunities to ask for it or to reach for smallness. I'm not talking about suppressing your feelings or degrading yourself in any way. It's not like that. It's not intellectual at all. It is a purely spiritual thing, a willingness to just take on the smallness of Christ in that moment. And I believe this mystery is another key to our excellence and our holiness and our happiness. Because it's when we try too much, when we become self-sufficient, or we're trying to be right. If you're wired like me, I'm high belief and high activator. That means I can come to snap judgments, and do I love to be right. But it always makes somebody else wrong. And what a waste of our lives and our feelings and our souls. Or when I just want to be my own strength instead of staying dependent on God. I gotta keep just getting the heck out of his way. I don't want to block any grace. I need it all. And please know that even the smallest moment of reaching for the smallest of Jesus in his humanity, in his meekness, and please do check out, I'm going to tell you in a moment, our great resources, but in those small moments of meekness, of our souls wanting to be meek like Christ, it's again like invisible chains falling off and experiencing a quiet but remarkable freedom. And I promise you, this is a game changer. So here's the resource I want to recommend. I have a friend who is a coach, and I don't get anything for recommending my friends or people that I admire, but I really admire this woman. Her name is Roxanne De Vera, and she has a website called Meek and Humble. She's a terrific coach, and she has spiritual wisdom, and she's a fairly young woman, like I rarely see. She's remarkable. So if you're looking for someone with a very gentle spirit, just sign up for her newsletter. You'll love it. It's their brief little writings, never fail to bless my soul. And she is all about, it's meekandhumble.com is her website. Meek and Humble. And I'm always so blessed by her. But this place of smallness, less conflict, more love, more peace, more mystery. Couldn't we use more of that sense of walking in mystery with the Lord, in his garden, holding his hand? More of him. What could be better than that? You are wonderfully made, my friends. Please pray for me. I'm praying for you too. God bless you.